This is such a major
What
part.
about today?
Lady, shut up, man.
No,
I'm talking about, no, listen, man.
Don't get to speak to me ever again. Ever.
The studio lights were blinding, the cameras locked in, and DMX sat frozen, staring down a setup he didn't see coming.
Get out.
No.
What do you mean, no? What is you... I'm tired of hearing that same sad story that you're saying. We need to get to the bottom. What's the real problem? I'm telling you the real problem. No. Are you high right now, man? What? Lady, what are you talking about now?
Owen's crew had cooked up a scene straight out of a trap movie. They dragged his son into the room without warning, hoping to crack him open for the cameras. But they forgot one thing. DMX ain't built to break like that. He wasn't some made-for-TV storyline. He was DMX. Wild, broken, brilliant, and dangerous. The audience came expecting a breakdown.
You don't know how many B words he called me. You don't know how, until the point where we had security on the set. Wow. And security had to really restrain my son. Because my son is not accustomed to hearing men call me out my name.
But what they got was raw resistance. This wasn't just a TV moment. This was a battle for what hip-hop really stands for. Pain, power, and survival.
You're saying that everything that's wrong with our culture is why I'm a success.
Wow.
So when I actually got a chance to talk to her, she was like, I never thought about it like that.
So how did Oprah, the queen of TV redemption arcs, get caught in the crossfire? Let's talk about the day Owen tried to fix DMX and got burned instead. It was dressed like therapy, sold like salvation, but the moment DMX stepped onto that stage, it was war. Soft lighting, calming music, inspirational set design, all of it a cover, a trap wrapped in good intentions. The man sitting across from Iyanla Vanzant wasn't just a guest, he was a target.
The way you would talk made me feel like beneath you. Even what you were saying was good.
Give me an example.
I mean, it was years ago.
Just one example. Just one, since I've done it so much. This is such a major
What
part.
about today?
Lady, shut up, man.
No,
I'm talking about, no, listen, man. Listen, man, I'm not.
Earl Simmons, the lion-hearted voice of the streets, showed up wounded but unmasked. Iyanla, she came prepped and polished, reciting spiritual slogans with surgical calm. The vibe imbalanced from the jump. This wasn't a safe space. It was a televised ambush with lights, scripts, and an audience waiting for a meltdown. And behind the velvet curtains, pulling the strings, Oprah Winfrey herself, the godmother of polished pain and televised healing. OWN needed numbers. They needed viral. They needed chaos wrapped in clarity. And they knew DMX was ratings gold. But instead of a redemption arc, what they captured was resistance. The man didn't fold. He flared. He snapped. And the internet? Oh, it lit up. This wasn't healing, this was framing, plain and simple. DMX's pain got boxed into a 1-hour special, edited for emotion, sold like a breakthrough. But from the jump, he knew it was a setup. He later said they tricked him into showing up. He thought he was walking into a heart-to-heart, not a hit job. He came in expecting to talk about rebuilding with his son, maybe even reconnect with himself. What he got instead? A cold, staged interrogation dressed up like tough love. Iyanla wasn't there to meet him halfway. She came armed, ready to break him down for the cameras.
The number of times that he raised up and really became aggressive, stepping into my energy because he was hot.
And she came out swinging. Live on national TV, she asked if he was high, not with care, but with judgment. No empathy, no respect. Just a public poke at scars he never tried to hide. His addiction, his past, his kids, his pain. It was all put on display like a showpiece. And when he flinched, when the fire came out, when he snapped, that's exactly what they wanted. DMX didn't blow up right away. He tried to keep it together. He really did. You could hear it in his voice, tight with frustration. Don't play with my family. You're playing with fire.
Every ounce of control that it's not called up stupid. It's not called stupid. Talk about it. You don't even know what the for. And of course I raised my voice.
But they kept the cameras rolling, waiting, pushing. And when he finally erupted, yelling, snapping, cursing, the producers had their gold. That was the clip they came for. Viral ready, messy, human, But the lowest blow? The ambush with his son. DMX said he had no clue his son was gonna be there, no heads up, no warning. Just a surprise reunion, sandwiched between accusations and silence. The moment was icy, forced, and DMX let it be known. I don't even know him like that. This kid don't know a can of paint. And still, Iyanla sat behind the boy, feeding him lines. Still, he tried, reached into his heart, digging up one of the few good memories he had. A photo with his son, him in a fat farm outfit, 2 pit bulls by his side, a rare sliver of peace. But even that moment couldn't survive the tension in that room. Every word he spoke got steamrolled by Iyanla's icy grip on control. She wasn't there to connect. She came to corner him. Her voice wasn't healing. It was calculated. It was like she came to win a debate, not understand a man. And DMX felt that betrayal deep. He later said, if she was a man, I would have punched her in the face. It wasn't about hate. It was about feeling violated.
What was it like being around DMX?
DMX was dangerous, man. Like, not dangerous, but he's like, when you around him, he's like, you don't know what's gonna happen. You know what I mean?
Like everything sacred had been twisted and turned into contempt. Once the camera stopped rolling, the story was already locked. DMX was angry. DMX was damaged. DMX was too far gone. But that narrative left out the biggest truth of all. The man had been clean. 6 months, no alcohol, no weed, no drama, just him trying to stay grounded. Off the radar, out the mix. Quiet recovery, but where was that footage? Nowhere, because that version of DMX didn't trend. That version didn't go viral. What did? The growl, the temper, the chaos. OWN didn't broadcast a breakthrough, they aired a breakdown. It wasn't therapy, it was television. DMX wasn't offered space. He was pushed into a corner for entertainment. And when people saw through it, the outrage exploded, not just from fans. Therapists, critics, even former supporters of Iyanla Vanzant called it out for what it was. Straight up exploitation. OWN stayed silent, no apology. Iyanla later wrote some teary-eyed letter trying to soften the blow, but DMX didn't buy it. She's toxic, he said. She didn't fix anything, she made it worse. And a whole lot of people agreed, because DMX, whether you feared his rage or respected his truth, was never the one to fake it. You didn't push him unless you were ready for whatever came next. Bark, bite, or both. Oprah and Iyanla didn't walk into that room talking to a polished, PR-trained celebrity. They faced Earl Simmons, and they weren't ready for him. They weren't ready. Not for Earl Simmons, because long before the chains, plaques, and platinum hits, DMX was just a kid wilding through Yonkers with busted shoes, stealing food just to make it through the day. Cameras and clipboards, that was the language of people who never had his back. Trust, he didn't have that luxury. There was no bedtime warmth, no Sunday dinners, no loving hand to pull him out the gutter, just icy homes, colder streets, and a boy raised by chaos. By 15, he'd cycled through more group homes than most people changed jobs. Arrests came and went, phone numbers switched like aliases. And when the world finally met DMX, most of the real him had already been buried, piece by broken piece. That pain never really went away. It just waited, bubbling under the surface like lava, ready to blow. Fred Rostar once said being around DMX was like walking next to a live wire. He could accidentally punch you. That wasn't a joke. That was real.
It wasn't even about protecting myself. I endured the disrespect. I'm an elder. I'm your elder. I'm old enough to be his mother.
DMX didn't snap. He carried trauma in his bones, and his reflexes were wired for survival. Even joy came with danger. Jay Farrow, the comedian famous for impressions, told a story once. He performed Party Up live next to DMX. Right in the middle of the hype, boom, DMX accidentally smacked him. No warning, just raw instinctive force. When asked how it felt, Jay didn't hold back. It was like getting hit with a cinder block. That's the kind of power X moved with. Heavy, unfiltered, unstoppable. And then there was that night on a beach in Miami. Calm vibes, scooter ride. Mace pulls up thinking it's all good. But DMX saw him, and it was like a beast got unleashed. No hesitation, no words. He charged. Memphis Bleak witnessed it all and saw DMX sprinting across the sand like he was hunting, like something in him just snapped. And Mace, not a single soul from his crew stepped in to stop it. That was the power of fear when it came to X. Real, raw fear. Nobody wanted smoke with him. Not a soul dared to tap him on the shoulder. Stories about DMX weren't exaggerated. They weren't legends passed down on mixtapes. They were normal. This man once robbed a reporter with his dog. Fat Joe saw him snatch a dude's chain right off his neck at a gas station, and all people did was stand there, mouths open. No one stepped in. No one said a word. That was just DMX being DMX. Ask Ja Rule about the time X took him on a ride, only for the cops to pull him over, and surprise, the car was stolen. I just sat there, frozen, while DMX looked at the officer, smirked, and said, "This ain't really my car," like it was comedy, like they were in a prank show. But he wasn't joking. He just didn't care. Not about charges, not about image, not about playing by the rules. But sometimes it wasn't just reckless, it was calculated. Ja Rule also opened up about what went down in Chicago. DMX allegedly called in the Latin Kings. 10 cars deep, they pulled up to the airport like it was a scene from a movie. DMX didn't just scare folks, he played chess in the shadows. Later, X told Ja straight up, "You only alive because of me." That wasn't a diss, that was a warning. People believed it, because when X said something like that, you felt it. This was Earl Simmons, not some made-for-TV rapper, not a contest winner looking for followers. He was pain, fury, and loyalty, packed into muscle, scars, and that infamous gravel voice. Even his beasts weren't for promo. Jay-Z knew what time it was. Drake definitely knew. DMX once said he didn't like anything about Drake.
What about Drake? You like Drake?
No.
My man.
He didn't even say a little bit. He didn't even say halfway.
That's my guy right there.
No.
That's why X is necessary in the game right there.
Okay. Now, why don't you like Drake?
I don't like anything about Drake. I don't like his voice. I don't like what he talks about. I don't.
See, I be trying to tell these face.
Not his voice, not his walk, not his haircut, nothing. Drake hadn't even done anything. But see, DMX didn't run on logic. His code was built on emotion, respect, vibes. If you crossed the line, even by accident, you were marked. So when Oprah and Iyanla tried to step to DMX with advice, coaching, and so-called compassion, they weren't guiding him. They were walking barefoot through a minefield, and they knew it. Because that moment on Iyanla, Fix My Life, that explosive face-off, that wasn't just about helping a troubled man. That was the final scene in a much deeper, much colder plan. See, if you pull back the curtain, if you strip away the applause, the soft lighting, the empire Oprah built piece by piece, what you'll find is a pattern. One that didn't begin with DMX, but it sure came for him. Oprah's always been a master storyteller. She knows how to frame a moment, how to shape public opinion. She chooses who gets the mic and who doesn't. And when it came to hip hop, she didn't just avoid it, she targeted it. It wasn't messy, it wasn't clumsy, it was deliberate, and people noticed because DMX wasn't her first hit. Oprah had a long history of pushing back against the rawest voices in rap, the unfiltered ones, the street prophets, the ones who didn't wear suits and play nice. She criticized the genre openly, in interviews, on panels, on carefully controlled episodes. She said hip-hop was toxic, blamed it for violence, for misogyny, for poisoning young minds. She called it out for glorifying crime, chaos, and corruption. That was her version of the culture. That was the narrative she kept feeding her audience. No nuance, no deeper look, no understanding of the why behind the bars, the trauma behind the rhymes, the pain behind the poetry. To Oprah, it was just noise. Only a chosen few got to rise above the line Oprah had drawn. So yeah, she welcomed Jay-Z with open arms, laughing, joking, even throwing around some playful rhymes on her couch like they were old friends. But Jay, he fit the image. He was the safe rapper, suited up, branded, a polished billionaire who'd flip Brooklyn hustle into a clean-cut empire. He was the version of hip-hop Oprah could present to her audience without flinching. A rapper she could rap in bow tie energy, but Ludacris, 50 Cent, DMX, different story. When Luda came on the Oprah Winfrey Show as part of the Crash Cast, they barely let him breathe. His music got dissected. His presence felt silenced. Later, he said it straight. He felt ambushed, like his voice was chopped out before he even got a chance to be heard. And he wasn't the only one. 50 Cent spoke out too, said Oprah, who he once respected, seemed to go out of her way to shame and scold rappers who looked like him.
I didn't have anything against Oprah.
You just called up.
I'm gonna tell you why.
You named your dog Oprah, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
That?
Look.
I remember that.
No, look, every time she made a mention to hip-hop culture, it was something that was wrong with it.
But when it came to the sins of rich, powerful white men, silence, crickets, the inconsistency hit hard. And by the time OWN brought DMX into their spotlight, people already knew what time it was. because X wasn't built for neat TV packages. He came broken, heavy with grief, battling demons no one saw. The streets had already chewed him up and spat him back out, and the world watched him crawl through that pain in interviews, in lyrics, in every bark and growl. He spoke through that pain, not with polish, but with fire. So when Oprah's network brought him on in the name of healing, people didn't feel hope. They felt suspicion. This wasn't about help. This was about performance. DMX wasn't brought on to be understood. He was cast as a problem to fix, a spectacle, a warning. And Iyanla Vanzant, she wasn't there as a healer. She came as Oprah's proxy, not to listen, but to discipline. What played out on screen wasn't therapy, it was theater. Pain dressed up as a segment. The world watched as DMX cornered and triggered, fired back. Every question she asked wasn't really a question. They were traps, product setups. She pushed. He pushed harder, and the headlines, they wrote themselves. DMX explodes on the same old spin. Another angry black man on national TV. They didn't frame him as a father in pain or a man fighting to stay sober. They framed him as broken, bitter, and beyond help. But ask yourself, who was really controlling that narrative? Because this wasn't about helping DMX. This was about showing the world exactly what Oprah had always drawn a line against: the unpolished. Her brand was built on transformation, but only the kind that fit into neat little boxes. People who could go from chaos to clean cut, from too much to just enough. But DMX, he didn't fold like that. He was jagged, loud, honest. He didn't hide behind stage smiles or suit and tie redemption arcs. And that made him dangerous to Oprah's brand. Or worse, useful. He became a cautionary tale. This is what happens when you don't fix yourself. Respectability politics has always shadowed black success. That unspoken pressure to be twice as good, half as loud, and never too real. Oprah's world praised those who learn to code switch, speak soft, walk straight, keep it spiritual and balanced. But DMX, he wasn't built for that. He didn't tone it down for TV. He didn't sanitize the truth to make it digestible. He bled it out, raw and messy. And that's what made the whole setup so cruel, because this didn't feel like care. It felt like spectacle. Oprah didn't give DMX a platform to reveal his humanity. She gave him a spotlight to showcase his pain. They held him under the lights and asked, what's wrong with him? Instead of, what happened to him? They told the critics they were too sensitive, but they weren't wrong. Because this wasn't just backlash. This was a reckoning. BT's Hip Hop versus America didn't pop up out of nowhere. It was a direct response to Oprah's framing, a bold move to snatch the mic back and speak truth on their terms. See, hip hop always gets put on trial. It's constantly asked to explain itself, defend itself, clean itself up, while the very systems it exposes, they get a pass. They stay protected. Even years later, that tension never left. People still remember how quick Oprah was to spotlight allegations against Russell Simmons, against Michael Jackson. Men who, whether cleared or unable to respond, were dragged into primetime shame sessions. But when it came to Harvey Weinstein, the man she was publicly seen smiling next to for years, silence, not a whisper. And that silence, it echoed loud. It left people asking who gets forgiven and who gets framed, because the contrast was too sharp to ignore. And to a lot of folks, it confirmed what they've been feeling all along. This wasn't about healing. This was about power, about control, about choosing who's worthy of saving and who gets put on display like a fallen star. DMX saw it for what it was. In a post-show interview, he didn't hold back. He said Iyanla went off script, dug into trauma he never agreed to unpack, brought up drug addiction in a way that felt sneaky. He said straight up, she set the whole thing up to make me look bad, for ratings. And watching it back, it didn't feel like therapy, it felt like entrapment. DMX wasn't trying to play the victim. He was fighting to be seen as more than just a headline. He wanted dignity. But the room he sat in, it felt like a trap, a padded cell with cameras instead of walls. And viewers could feel it too. Watching that episode felt like watching a man get dissected while still breathing. He knew it, one wrong move, one wrong word, and the whole thing could blow up. And it almost did. There were moments where it looked like X might walk out, flip the whole set, or shut down completely. His eyes were burning. His body was tight like a coiled spring. But somehow, he stayed. Not for the cameras, not for Iyanla. He stayed for his son. Because deep under all that pain, all that fire, there was love. A love so fierce, it scared him. Other artists saw what happened, and they weren't silent. Rappers who had been through the same kind of media judgment stepped up and spoke out. They called it what it was: disrespect. Not just to DMX, but to everything he represented. This wasn't just a messy episode, it was a betrayal. DMX had always been honest, brutally honest, about addiction, trauma, and survival. He laid it all out in his music, and to see that honesty used against him for views, that felt like a violation. One artist said it loud and clear, Oprah disrespected DMX, and that statement hit home for a lot of people following the controversy. They pointed straight to that surprise moment, the unannounced appearance of DMX's son, as the biggest betrayal. He didn't even know his son would be there until the cameras were already rolling. To DMX, that wasn't healing, that was manipulation. It wasn't just a plot twist. It was twisting his personal story without his consent. Viewers were outraged. They said the show crossed a serious line, turning a man's open wounds into primetime drama. Even Iyanla later admitted things went off track. She called the shift from healing to spectacle heartbreaking. Some folks called DMX's outburst ungrateful. Some said he was just being difficult. But the ones really paying attention, they saw the truth. They saw a man who had walked through fire, only to be set up again, this time in front of the whole world. The internet for once didn't just eat up the drama, they questioned the entire setup. Was this really about healing, or was it all just a slick trap meant to humiliate him? What was sold as a redemptive moment turned into a televised ambush. And DMX, he didn't fold. He didn't give them a clean, controlled breakdown. What he gave them was real. His fury wasn't for show, it was a message. Not just to Iyanla, not just to Oprah, but to everyone watching. Yes, he was wounded, yes, he carried darkness, but he was never fake, never polished. And that's exactly what made the fallout so unforgettable. OWN tried to shame him, thought they'd break him down into a sob story the audience could clap for. But instead, they exposed themselves. Because when a man like DMX stands tall in his pain, when he refuses to play along with the script, it shakes the whole machine. The damage wasn't done to him, it was done to the show's image. That shiny mask of redemption TV shattered. What was supposed to be a healing moment ended up revealing something darker. Character assassination wrapped in therapeutic language. But X flipped the script on him, and that shook him to the core. Because what he reminded the world is this: some truths can't be softened, some stories can't be edited, and some souls, no matter how broken, will never bow. DMX didn't just survive the ambush, he exposed it. If you made it this far, sound off in the comments. Did DMX get betrayed by the system, or was he just too real for TV? Make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you want more deep dives like this.